My name is Trip Gatelli. I'm a senior solutions consultant for our Pro Video team. Um, on my daily journey, I take care of our government and public sector customers who have unique needs, but the messaging is really the same for that market as it is to any commercial user. Um, Today, I've been asked to talk about Premiere Pro CC and specifically optimizing performance. Um, it's really easy for me to say, well, you should get the biggest machine possible, the most RAM possible, the most cores of processing power possible, and the biggest and fastest hard drives. And while that's all valid recommendation, I know that that's not a possibility for every one of our customers, especially the folks I talk to in the government. But what I wanted to talk about is sort of the key areas of building, a high performance box for editing video in Premiere Pro CC, doing motion graphics in After Effects CC, and really taking advantage of the technology and the power that we're really building into the application now. And so a lot of these recommendations have been the same since CS5, since we were a native 64-bit native application. They're really the same, but I answer questions about these every day. And so I really want to impart sort of some wisdom when you're putting together your system that might save you some frustration in the long run. The first area of performance is really processors, and the reason why I say is invest as in many cores as you can, because that's really the foundation that you're building your machine from. They tend to be difficult to upgrade later in the life of the machine, and really, except for effects mainly, at least in Premiere Pro, the processors do just about all the processing. And I also couple the second area is RAM. If you have 16 cores and you only have 8 gigs of RAM, you're just going to be starving all those cores that you purchase from. So really try to balance out your cores that you have and the RAM that you're going to install. That's the foundation right there. I know RAM is easy to add, but processors aren't. So that should be really your first consideration. The third part is really GPU. Now, GPU in the Adobe world really concentrates on just effects only. And the amount of power, the cores of processing, and RAM that's resident on these new graphics cards are really phenomenal at reasonable prices. The fourth sort of leg of this stool is hard drive speed. So any one of these areas can make your entire system slower, but I tried to put them in an order that I think I would call order of importance. So processors, RAM, really are your foundation that are difficult to change after the fact. GPU, you'll know how much special effects you really do. We're accelerating about 45 effects within Premiere, but if you're doing ray tracing in After Effects, then that will affect your purchase. And then hard drive speed. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But really what I suggest is a balanced approach. If you overkill on any one of these areas, it might be a waste of money altogether, or it might be even holding your system back. Like in the case of RAM. If you don't have enough RAM combined with the number of processors that you have, then your processors will be there, but you won't be utilizing them. And I usually recommend about 2 gigabytes of RAM for every core that you're running. So just kind of, the experts at ProMax will be able to kind of dial into what you're looking for, but that's kind of my rule of thumb if someone stops me on the street and asks me about RAM. Happens all the time. So, you've heard about the Mercury Playback Engine, And you know, it's a great marketing term, and I loved it when CS5 came out, and we started using the term Mercury Playback Engine because it really was a phenomenal um, first step into bringing Premiere Pro on par and beyond the other nonlinear editors. So what is it? Well, what Mercury Playback Engine is really all about is really harnessing the native 64-bit operating system with a native 64-bit application like Premiere Pro, and really having the ability to wring out all the performance in a multi-core, multi-threaded machine, and utilizing all the RAM that you had. So we're not under any of the restrictions that we were in a 32-bit system. You're able to use, you know, all the RAM, whether you have 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes or 48 gigabytes. Mercury Playback is all about combining the strength of all these things. Now, in our marketing, a lot of people came away thinking, hey, if I don't have a NVIDIA card or GPU in my machine, I don't have Mercury Playback Engine, and that is simply not true. If you have a 64-bit machine and you have enough RAM and processor power, you have Mercury Playback. And the proof is that you can just about put any native file format on the timeline and press go. I can put cell phone footage next to XD cam, next to digital SLR footage, all in the same timeline, and press go, and it plays beautifully. And that's what the power of Mercury Playback Engine is all about. Now, what GPU acceleration does for you is it affects all the effects that we've coupled with GPU power. So NVIDIA has been a huge partner with us in accelerating about 45 or 50 special effects that radically speed up your renders when you're outputting movies. What's really amazing is how many cores of processing power is resident on these cards now. And the amount of gigabytes of RAM that are resident. It's just like another whole subcomputer taking care of those routines and allowing Premiere to play right through the timeline, even with special effects on there. Now, NVIDIA also has dedicated Maximus cards that don't really have any video output or any heads on those cards, and it just gives you more and more cores of processing power and memory. And so the latest version allows for multiple GPU cards and to harness that power in a meaningful way. Now, what really kind of pushed us into supporting OpenCL is really the MacBook Pros. For a long time, there was no NVIDIA chipsets available, and we didn't want our Mac customers left out of all this GPU goodness. So we started writing our routines for OpenCL. Now, what that's done for us in the long run is greatly expanded our approved graphic cards. If you're around watching CS5 and the CS 5.5 time frame, you'll remember that the approved card list was about maybe one for the Macintosh and maybe a dozen for the Windows boxes. And so it was very much a very specific card combination that would work with those previous versions. But as you can see, and I didn't really make this chart for you to really read every one of these, but I just want to show you that with the Premiere Pro CC release, the card selection really has expanded, and it's just giving you more power, more flexibility, more return on your investment. And my government customers love this. You know, they don't get to purchase new hardware all the time. Sometimes their cards are not as new as they would like, and this really does open up, you know, our customers to more flexibility as far as having GPU goodness to help with special effects. Now, pretty much any card that has a gigabyte of RAM is probably going to work, but these are the ones that we know that work really well. And here's a URL at the bottom so that you can see kind of the updated list as quickly as we produce it. So let's talk a little bit about hard drive speed. You know, on my MacBook that I'm going to be presenting on today, you know, it has OpenCL, it has 16 gigs of RAM, but you know, when it comes right down to it, it's amazing that I can play multiple streams of HD on this with really no problem. But at a certain point, when I stack up 4 or 5 or 6 layers of HD at full resolution, even an SSD internally can't keep up with the demands that Premiere is asking for. And one thing that is really interesting and really useful about Premiere Pro is that it'll try to do the best it can with the hardware that you have around it. And so really this talk is all about sort of optimizing what you put around Premiere. But you know, if you have a lot of RAM and processing power, but you're trying to serve up, you know, 5 or 6 streams of HD off of a single drive, well, Premiere can't make the drive feed the timeline any quicker. But as soon as you put a RAID on it or, you know, more drives and more bandwidth, it's able to play just about anything. And so that's why we do see 4K playing on the timeline with the right CPU, with enough RAM, and with fast enough drives. So people ask me a lot about what do I think about drives and where is this all going? Well, I have to say, with my MacBook Pro that I'm using, I have a 500 gigabyte SSD in there, and I tell you, it's really breathed new life in my 17-inch MacBook Pro. Startup times are 10 seconds. Everything is quicker. Since that's kind of where my projects live and my scratch disks live, everything is naturally sped up. But I'm not saying that the spinning disk is gone. SSDs are more expensive. They will wear out. That I feel like they take a little bit more care and feeding, using, paying attention to trim and all that. Media drives, boy, the world has changed so much, and drives have become a commodity of sorts. G-Tech has some really fantastic drives, as well as LaCie. I'm testing a LaCie, kind of a little baby NAS that I attached just gigabit Ethernet, and even with a little NAS, maybe a 5-drive bay, 2 editors can really edit up a storm just in your office. So it's really amazing how far we've come, especially with Thunderbolt, USB 3, and just Ethernet little networks. I guess I've already given kind of told my hand about what I think about SSDs and versus spinning disks. I do think SSDs take a little bit more care. They're more expensive, but boy, if that's the only drive, or you have maybe 2 SSDs or a spinning drive and an SSD in a Mac or in a PC notebook, boy, it just changes the way the things that you can do and the layers that you can play out even in a laptop. And I'm always happy to talk more about speed, but what I wanted to say was that's really the 4th pillar of performance, is even if you have great RAM, processors, and GPU, if you can't feed the machine the information when it's asking for it, then obviously hard drive speed will be a bottleneck. But with the inexpensive RAIDs that are available and the interfaces that we have now, it's just not as much of an issue. It's just that now we're trying more things. And then there's some application-specific needs, sort of like when you look at how After Effects is using global caching. SSDs and lots of RAM mean more than it does even in Premiere. Global caching in After Effects has changed the way a lot of the artists that I talk to work. and it saves all those renders that you were working in that project yesterday. And having an SSD or lots of RAM really does matter because you're doing a lot of swapping from drive to RAM, and obviously SSDs can facilitate that much faster. So if you've spent any time with Premiere Pro already, or if you're moving from Final Cut Pro or Avid over to Premiere Pro, the first thing you're just startled by is the ability to just throw just about any native file format on the timeline. It can be together or not, and just hit go, and it plays. I mean, it is really remarkable. That's the first thing that every user who's contemplating a change or is a longtime Premiere user, just it's not having a transcode on the way in changes the way they do their business. And so obviously we cover all the standard ones. We've been covering these for a lot longer, some a lot longer than others. Just a kind of a side note, Kurt had mentioned, hey, you know, CS6 isn't going away. Well, in fact, it isn't. And today we came out with CS 6.0.4, I think it is. And that is some bug fixes and some file format support that we want to make sure that our CS6 users needed. We had kind of a miserable little ABCHD bug on spanning clips where one clip ends on one card and starts on another. And we wanted to make sure that our CS6 users, you know, were good to go. And so we released that today also. So we're not abandoning anyone with Creative Cloud, but definitely the innovation is going to be happening with the CC product. And as Kurt mentioned, you know, 2 releases since NAB, and another one could be shown at the IBC timeframe. So the standard sort of formats that you'd expect, RE, Red, and the Canon Cinema formats, a little bit more exotic. We're trying to keep up with all the latest cameras, which, you know, if we don't keep up with them, then you can't keep up with them. And I know that you're buying all these new cameras, and we definitely don't want to slow that down. Another feature that came out with Premiere Pro CC is that we are shipping mezzanine codecs. So people have been asking us for a long time, hey, are you going to come up with your own codec? Well, so far we haven't, because there's some really great options out there. And we know how hard it is to create one, market one, and drive adoption. So you will see ProRes. On the Macintosh side, we have both read and write. And on the Windows side, only read only. And that's really just a licensing issue from Apple. We also are shipping with DNX HD, which is a really fantastic codec for both Windows and Macintosh. It's the MXF OP1A wrap version. And boy, talking about having a nice mezzanine codec, you know, I kind of like DNX HD, but if you're coming from Final Cut, boy, you probably have a ton of ProRes hanging around. So, you know, just the thing I like to even mention to my government customers as well as any commercial is that we really do have you covered. We're going to continuously innovate. Creative Cloud only allows us to release our innovations sooner and to keep up with the industry. We're Mac and Windows compatible. You know, even if you're a longtime Mac person, boy, you take a look at some of these Windows machines, and they are very capable machines with a lot of flexibility and options. Once you're in our applications, you really can't tell the difference. We have always taken a broad, open look at supporting different formats. We try to keep up with all the camera manufacturers as soon as they release their cameras so that our users like you are not holding the bag or having to transcode on the way in. If you have a ton of Final Cut Pro and Media Composer projects, you know, we've been the Switzerland of nonlinear editing for a long time. with the expertise that we have under our roof with Automatic Duck and XML expertise, we're really ahead of the game on that. And if you go to our website, I mean, we have a ton of resources to help you migrate away from Final Cut Pro or Media Composer. You know, dynamic link, you know, no one is closer to After Effects and Photoshop and our other applications than Premiere Pro. You're starting to see panel integrations within Premiere Pro. Now that we're kind of invited to the professionals table, now they're going, hey, how do we work as a group? Do you integrate with MAMs? Do you integrate with stock footage companies? And we have an open API that allows them to build a panel right within Premiere so that you're never leaving the environment for outside resources. So for all these new MAMs, the Delettes, the Levels Beyond, the Siennas, all those, they're all writing to Premiere Pro. And then project management, bin locking, all the things that professional groups are asking about. And we also are shipping integration with Adobe Anywhere, which is our enterprise collaborative editing solution. That's very exciting. If you think that we're not thinking ahead and innovating with Premiere Pro and After Effects and Prelude, take a look at the videos about Adobe Anywhere on our website. It's really magical right now. I want to not leave you without any resources to move forward with, and I can somehow relay these to Leslie at ProMax so that you can read up on optimizing hardware. We can go into a lot more detail about if you're an After Effects artist, you have specific needs, and you're doing 100 layers projects regularly, then you know there are some things that you can do to optimize and hot rod your machine to make that go faster. So I'll make sure that these are available to anyone who needs them. And so just to kind of take a look at Premiere, I think we have about 10 more minutes, Leslie, or do we need to open it up for questions? Where are we?
We do, but I think that everybody's eager to get into Premiere. So we do have a few questions, but let's take a look inside.
Okay, well, you know, Premiere, there's not much for me to show in a couple minutes, but you know, back to the hardware acceleration, and this is true with CS6 and even CS 5.5, but this is a feature that we came out with in CS6, and it's just an adjustment layer. And if you're used to using adjustment layers in Photoshop, then you know exactly what I'm going to do here. I have 4 layers of video, and if I want to add something to all 4 at the same time, well, before this adjustment layer, I'd have to add color correction or whatever I'm doing to each one individually and adjust them individually. Certainly not very convenient. Now I'm going to just put this in motion, and it should be looping. And I have it at quarter resolution just because I can't, my hard drive is almost full. I don't have the performance that I usually would. So let me loop that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here into Effects, and I'm going to just get color. So I'm going to put 3-way color on this adjustment layer. And what you notice instantly is that when I threw that effect on the adjustment layer, my drop frames indicator turned yellow. So, you know, what that means is I've added a special effect on here that my CPU can't keep up with. And maybe my hard drive too, but certainly I can't keep playing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to Project Settings, go under General. Let me zoom in just a little bit. And what you'll see is, what renderer do I want to use? Well, it looks like right now I'm only using software only, so that means I'm only touching the CPU and nothing about the GPU. And what you see here is I can turn this to OpenCL. Now, if you had a Macintosh that had an NVIDIA card, a MacBook Pro with an NVIDIA card in there, you would see three options. You would see a Mercury Playback Engine, GPU acceleration, CUDA. You would also see this one, OpenCL, and the software only. I don't have NVIDIA in here. I'm going to delete the preview files. Let me back out of here so you can take a look. And so what you'll notice is now that I have the GPU on, let me adjust some color here. There we go. So you'll notice that my light stays green, no drop frames, but I'm adjusting this on the fly, right? So I haven't stopped playing. I'm adding stuff. I'm getting the feel for what I'm trying to do with all these views, and it's really nice. This is just on a single laptop with 16 gigs of RAM. So let me keep playing here, and let me add a little something else here. Let's see. I'll go for Bro. I know it doesn't show up over the web meeting, but that's why I put the drop frames light here, just so that you can see that I'm not. I'm going to throw a basic 3D on here. And, you know, really, this should stop everything if I start playing with this. But see, this is another one of the accelerated effects that OpenCL or an NVIDIA card would speed up. So you notice that it's still playing, and I'm still manipulating, and there's no drop frames. So it just gives you the power that even on a laptop, I can do 4 streams of HD and do some kind of crazy things, and it's not costing me anything in render time, right? This is all real time, and it's allowing me to play with it without, you know, sitting for a few minutes and seeing how that worked out. So just a small little smattering of what hardware assistance can do for you, and that Premiere Pro will maximize whatever you're using. And we're always happy to have that conversation with you. I think we have only a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to give you a quick look at what GPU can help you with.
Okay, Trip, I'm going to stay on your screen for a moment, but there are a few questions I'd like to address before we sign off for today. Will CS6 still be updated with new features by Adobe?
Well, yes. I mean, we came out with a release today. Our official wording says indefinitely, which I don't know exactly what that means. I'm just saying that's what we say officially. But we're not going to leave our CS6 people in a lurch. We are not going to allow them not to be able to keep up with the latest formats and that sort of thing going forward. But obviously the innovation that you see is really going to be happening in CC. So if you want closed captioning support, you have to be at CC. If you want multiple GPU support, it's CC. If you want anywhere integration, it's CC. So we're going to keep you functional in CS6, but the innovation and the new stuff is going to all happen in the Creative Cloud versions.
Okay. Another question. Any hope for ProRes 422 codec with Premiere?
Are they talking about ProRes 422 or?
Yes, I believe so.
I think we have that already in CC. So let me act like I'm going to export this so I can take a look. By the way, everyone, this is our export module if you've never seen it. Let's take a look at what's shipping here. So I changed this to QuickTime up here, and then I have to go down here. ProRes 422. So we have it here.
Terrific.